What's going on, Adam? It's like 70 degrees plus on the East Coast.
Yeah, man, weather's been great. Went out last
I,
night and it wasn't cold at all. It was amazing.
I was wearing sweatpants over my shorts. I just inconspicuously slipped them off for the start of today's show. Welcome to the deeper dive. Um, what is this? All right, let's do it. Dave Lochran, Adam Shaw, getting an early start today, just in case we have any difficulties or complications. Look, not that that would happen, right? Not that could potentially be an issue. Anyway, 8 games. Adam, first of all, it's been pretty awesome that this entire week you've had at least 5 and no more than 9 games.
Yeah, I wish every week was like this. Just no short slates, no massive slates. Just give us like 6 to 8.
I know. William Best says Lou was in a 20K winning lineup last night. Yeah, dude, Lou. We talked heavily about Lou. He was a perfectly fine player. He didn't hurt you at all. Not to mention, he got real flustered at the end. Then he just started missing everything when he got called for a travel in like a 6-point game, and then it went downhill. But he played 24 minutes and took 19 shots. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I'm assuming the Lou reference is because Josh was getting shit for it on the show this morning.
Why? Josh liked Lou Williams.
Yeah, he was getting shit for liking Lou Williams because somebody said that Lou Williams can't win you a tournament.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. You take 19 shots in 25 minutes and you make you just go off. Whatever. Who even cares? Why are we even talking about this? I just figured I would reference it. Welcome to everybody to the deeper dive. That's cool. We got a thumbs down already, and we're not even a minute into the show. My guess is someone's salty about something in the free content that they've been given. Yeah, we're really evil souls. Give us a thumbs up if you so appreciate the show and enjoy watching and think that we're providing you with something useful. Someone doesn't, but that's okay, man. We're going to keep doing what we do, and we appreciate all of our viewers. It's Friday night, Adam. Let's jump into it. 8 games. Clippers, Orlando. We'll start there. Clippers playing their second of a back-to-back. They are favorites on the road, though. It's an Orlando team that I think is actually going to get better as the season goes on. I could say the same for a few teams in the East. I don't think they're going to be good, but I think they probably finish somewhere around 500. This game should stay close. 219 total here. I guess we'll start on the Magic side of the ball where you've got Vucevic, 8,600. Embiid just ravaged the Clippers yesterday for like 42 and 13 or 41 and 13. Had a huge outing. Just pretty much imposed his will upon Gortat, who then got benched for Boban, who did maybe a little bit better, but still had his soul stealing from him. Vooch isn't as physical as a center, but he's still pretty talented. He's also pretty expensive. Let's start off with him.
Yeah, I mean, the price tag is the only sticking point for me. I love the spot. I'm hoping that I'm able to get a decent amount in my tournament lineups just because I think he does have a ton of upside here. The Clippers defense overall has been pretty good this season, but this is like the glaring weak spot when you have Gortat, who doesn't rebound and doesn't play defense. You have Montrezl Harrell behind him, who's an undersized small ball center that isn't really a good fit for this game against 2 7-footers at center for Orlando. And then you have Boban, as the big backup, basically, who is slow as hell and isn't going to be able to defend Vucevic anyway. So it's just a spot where there's no answer to be able to defend Vucevic here. So the price point's the only issue there, especially on DraftKings. There's a lot of really cheap, very good value at center today, and that is going to make it hard to get Vucevic into any sort of optimal lineup. Obviously, you can still find a way to pay up for him to be contrarian in tournaments, but the price tag is really the only sticking point for me. I love the spot.
Yeah, that's the problem. I really like this spot for Vooch. Again, emphasize that he's not the same player as Embiid, but he's also a good scorer. The biggest thing about Embiid, did you watch any of that game last night?
No.
No? Okay. Well, you know this about Embiid anyway, so it doesn't really matter. He does just so much in the post, right? Like he always leads the league in post possessions and post points since he's come in. I can't even find it. Dude, NBA stats got rid of play type data.
Yeah, that's been really annoying today.
Yeah, writing the article sucked.
Yeah, I'm sure.
With that, I use it. I know you use it a lot too, whether it's pick and roll or isolation or transit, like all of that stuff. It's really disappointing. Fortunately, I can look in touches under tracking and look it up and tell you that Joel Embiid has the fourth most post ups this year, and Vooch is like 10th with only a couple less per game. I think that's a big sticking point here. That in the post, this is a spot where you can beat up on the Clippers, as we saw last night. Vooch does operate pretty heavily in the post, but he's also someone similarly to Embiid that's got some range, Adam. So while he's not Joel Embiid, they do have some similar skill sets that play well in this specific matchup.
Yeah, for sure. And then also a good rebounder against, Gortat and undersized Harrell. So, yeah, I think it's a great matchup for him in multiple aspects.
All right, talk to me about the rest of this Orlando team, whether it be Gordon. We know, by the way, that John Simmons is out for, I think, rest purposes, but that doesn't really matter. Or maybe his wrist, something. I don't think anyone cares. Go ahead.
I think that there's a few underpriced guys here. It is a pace-up spot for Orlando. You have Evan Fournier coming off a god-awful game against the Kings, but you can't, factor that in when you're projecting him for tonight. I still have him in there for around 34 minutes. Simmons out, I think, helps to solidify his minutes as well. Has about a 25% usage rate and a 17% expected assist percentage this season. So very involved in this offense. Only $5,500. I like him quite a bit. Jonathan Isaac's only $4,400 on DraftKings. He was 3% owned against Sacramento and had a really terrible game, but I think that he still should be projected for 28 to 30 minutes. I have him projected for around 27, 28 DraftKings points. So I think he's a little bit too cheap. And then, Augustine and Ross as value guys, especially with Simmons out, for Ross should get a couple extra minutes. But overall for me, it's Vooch in terms of raw points, and then Fournier and Isaac as value guys.
Yeah, Fournier is the only other guy that I find really enticing on this slate. And it's not that much. It's just that at a position that's not very deep, I think you get some value there. Obviously, a small forward, I like him better than I do at shooting guard. And unfortunately, he's only small forward or shooting guard eligible on FanDuel. But Vooch is the guy. It comes back to, once again, centers. And there are a bunch of centers that I like. Some of them do feel a little bit overpriced, though. I mean, Capella on DraftKings is getting up there. Jordan's up, above 8K. There's a few now that are getting a little pricey, Adam.
Yeah. Center pricing today is kind of weird because the guys that we've been playing in the mid-range have kind of gotten priced up to the top of the mid-range. But then at least on DraftKings, we still have those, excellent value guys down there with, guys like Wendell Carter and Jarrett Allen.
All right. Damn it. Someone else posted that I had a typo in the deep dive today. I actually appreciate when people do that because I'm super anal about that stuff, and sometimes you still get it wrong. So no, that was not intentional. It was supposed to be something else. But anyway, let's keep it moving. At awesemo.com is where you can find all of our other work. Adam's, mine, Josh's, Chris, of course, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, and so much more, whether it be for any other sport. Awesemo.com. You know it. The other side of this game, Clippers, second of a back-to-back. I don't know. Maybe you're higher on some players in this game than I am, but I was finding myself having a tough time prioritizing here. But I want to start with Boban. Gortat basically was benched in favor of Marjanovic, who came in, specifically to defend Embiid. The problem is he's such a hulking monster that playing a back-to-back after 23 minutes is like running a marathon and then climbing Mount Everest in the same day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about the back-to-back. I think it's a spot where you would like him to play reasonably big minutes off the bench because you do have two 7-footers here with Vucevic and with Mo Bamba backing him up. So it's a spot where I expect Boban to play, basically as much as he can handle probably. So I'm mixing him into some tournaments just because he clearly has a monster ceiling if he does get run, but it's just really hard to be confident in projecting him for a lot of minutes. But still getting, sprinkling him in isn't going to harm anything if you're multi-entering. The center position in general here is just kind of a mess. We still haven't seen Gortat close a single game this season. It's hard to imagine that Montrezl Harrell gets a bunch of run. So I've actually been sprinkling in a little bit of Gortat as well, just because I think one of the actual big centers is going to have to be out there. And I don't know what kind of shape Boban's in. But, outside of mixing those guys in, it's just secondary guys for the Clippers for me. I like Gallinari. I like Lou Williams. I like Pat Beverly. But there's a lot of guys on the slate that I like more than all of them. So, really nothing but secondary options from the Clippers side.
Yeah, maybe even tertiary options when it comes to me. They're going to need a big out there. Like, I don't think you can just stick Harrell on Vooch. As silly as it sounds, Boban actually wasn't that bad on Embiid. I mean, you look at Embiid's line, and it would tell you otherwise, but he did take 32 shots. Marjanovic was a lot better than Gortat was. Gortat was just dreadful, man. He played 9 minutes and never came back out. But it's really tough coming out of a back-to-back. I know you're like 23 minutes isn't anything. When you're a dude of his size and you got to run the court, I can't imagine. And then you have to travel. I don't know. I don't even know how they get him on an airplane.
And one other thing to keep in mind as far as why his minutes are risky here, even though it is a matchup where you would like him to be on the floor, is that we have seen the Clippers lately going to their small lineup, even against traditional centers. They did it most recently against Steven Adams. They ran their lineup with Harris at the 4 and Gallo at the 5 for a stretch of the fourth quarter. So there's at least some, non-zero chance that they just forego a center altogether down the stretch, especially if Boban's having trouble with, conditioning.
Yeah. Mike Love Thyself says, no way Boban can run with Bamba. No, of course not. But I'm talking about Vooch. I'm talking strictly about Vooch. I don't see any reason that Boban would be out there with Mo Bamba on the court. That would
right. It would be Vooch closing and Boban coming in.
Right. All right. So let's go ahead and there he is. There's awesome. Alex Baker said that, well, it's exhausting to get doubles in 10 minutes, I'm sure. Dude, the Boban experience a couple of years back with San Antonio was one of the greatest experiences ever, where he was literally playing like 10 minutes a game and dropping 30 fantasy points. He was the only player I think I've ever rostered with projected 13 minutes. Like, seriously, when will the last person that you remember who it was before him? I hope so. Come on now.
No.
Hassan Whiteside.
I don't know if I was even playing back when his rookie year. I'm not sure.
It wasn't his rookie year. He was cast out of Sacramento and the league altogether. And then when everything looked as bleak as possible, like it was done, he comes back with Miami. This is when Bosh was hurt and all of their bigs went down, and Spoelstra, as much as he loathed doing this, he had to play Whiteside, and Whiteside triple doubled with blocks in like 20 minutes. And
I vaguely remember that now.
Yeah, was just dropping monster numbers, and Spoelstra refused to give him any additional minutes until later in the season. But Whiteside's the only other guy I can think of that really put up those type of numbers. And once in a while they come along, and it's really a lot of fun. Even Embiid, if you remember, when he was playing 18, 20 minutes and dropping 45. So it's always the centers, of course. But Brooklyn and Houston, Adam, let's keep it moving here. I will ask you this much first. Have you seen any additional updates on Harden? And the reason I ask is we know he's doubtful, but he practiced in full yesterday, and it looks like they're just for precautionary reasons not playing him today and then plan on playing him tomorrow on the second of a back-to-back. That's what I'm seeing or expecting.
I haven't seen anything other than that he's doubtful. I haven't seen anything new.
Right. Okay. Neither have I. It's weird that he practiced in full on Thursday, though. Brooklyn and Houston, we've got ourselves a 220 over under Houston by 4.5. In Brooklyn, of course, you say you don't follow basketball, so this should be fun. What is the Houston Rockets record?
2-5.
1-5.
Yeah.
They are 1-5. Pretty incredible. The Nets, meanwhile, are 3-5. Chris Paul, 9,400. Two really disappointing outings with Harden out, and now you've got a point guard position that we're going to dive deep into with a bunch of other guys that are really nicely priced. We'll start with the Houston side of the ball here. They're 4-point favorites on the road.
I still like Paul. You mentioned that the point guard position's deep, and that's going to keep me from having, tons and tons of exposure to him. But I like him here still because he's coming off those 2 bad games, and it's going to help depress his ownership a little bit. You're still looking at a guy that should play 36 to 38 minutes here, 27% usage rate, around a 50% assist percentage in a reasonably good matchup against Brooklyn. And I just think there's a lot to like here. He's been shooting really poorly in the 2 games without Harden. I believe I figured it out this morning. I think it was 9 for 32 since Harden, went to since Harden's injury. So I still think that he bounces back, or he should bounce back, and you have to project him to be a really good play here. So I like him. You have Clint Capella, who he's a little more expensive than I'd like. I still think he's a good play, but we've talked about it a lot that he does become a little bit less efficient with Chris Paul out there instead of James Harden. Averages about 1.1 to 1.15 points per minute instead of 1.3. Still a nice matchup for him here, though. I think that he's reasonably priced. So I like him. And then it kind of drops off. Eric Gordon, I think is okay. Josh mentioned how poorly he's been shooting as well, and he should, see some positive regression there going forward, which means that he does have upside. Carmelo Anthony, I don't really like if James Ennis comes back. I think you'll see him lose a few minutes, probably play closer to 30, 32 instead of like 36. So it's really Paul is my favorite play, Capella right behind him, and then Gordon as a secondary guy.
Yep, I'm with you. And then, it is possible that if you're having a good Karis LeVert game, you'd want James Ennis in there for defensive purposes. But I assume you could throw in a PJ Tucker or something and be no worse for wear. But Melo's not exactly a shutdown defender. And, outside of Russell, Karis LeVert's the only other guy on this team that you really worry about putting up points on you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned PJ Tucker, and I actually think that's a reasonable value play because, one, we know the minutes are going to be there, but I'm expecting with Ennis back for Tucker to go back to being the backup center like we had seen earlier in the season.
Which is doable against the small front.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be Ed Davis or Vonleh Hollis-Jefferson as the Nets backup 5. So, yeah, I'm expecting Tucker to get back to around 12 to 14 minutes at center, which is obviously really valuable.
It's really crazy, too, though. It's in 2018, PJ Tucker is getting noteworthy minutes at the 5.
Yeah.
He's 6'6". That's insane. And then you have a 6'10", 6'11" point guard in Philadelphia. And then a freak in Milwaukee that can literally play all 5 positions.
Right.
Yeah, this is
NBA is insane right now.
It is. It's a fun time to be alive. This game's less appealing to me than I think most. I like Capella. I think he's a fine play. Do I think he's a little bit overpriced, as you mentioned? Yeah, I think he's a little bit overpriced. But it's not a terrible spot. It's a good spot, actually. Jared Allen is actually a quality defender. He's someone that I actually have been impressed with thus far. But the thing about Clint Capella, unless you are good at stopping alley-oops and, if you think about how Clint Capella scores, I'd pull it all up right now, but we kind of just know. He's not someone that's going to post up. He's not someone that's getting plays designed for him. His stuff is all just pretty in terms of how to defend it. You don't really defend it. It's just he's there. And if you've watched the Rockets, you know what I'm talking about. But I think he's a good play. I agree that with Harden, he's more viable, but I don't have any issue with him here. Outside of that, it's tough to really fall in love with any of these guys. On the other side, Jared Dudley, the ancient Jared Dudley, played 38 minutes in an overtime game last time. I mean, that's just outrageous. And they won, so it's probably like Kenny Atkinson is going to stick to the script. Even though you have a much better player in Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. Hollis-Jefferson's played 27 and 25 minutes over his last 2 games. The shot attempts are beginning to climb. Atkinson's always encouraged him to take more threes, and it's like he's afraid to do it. I wish he would, because that would add another element to his game when he's getting hot. But Rondae Hollis-Jefferson is $4,900 on DraftKings and $5,400 on FanDuel at a weak power forward position.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to like him at that price just because, especially in tournaments, there's clearly volatility in his minutes here because Jared Dudley plays so many minutes ahead of him, but it makes no sense that Dudley plays more minutes ahead of him. So there's going to be games where you see Hollis-Jefferson's minutes trend up, and he's a very productive player when he does get the play. We saw him play center in overtime last game. Jared Allen had fouled out, but he played the 5 over Ed Davis, which was really good to see. He had played a few minutes there during regulation as well. So he's trending in the right direction as far as, center minutes, and the price tag just gives a lot more room for reward than risk. So I like him quite a bit. I probably will end up playing, 15-20% on DraftKings.
Yeah, I like Rondae Hollis-Jefferson here. He's producing right around the fantasy point per minute. He's cheap enough to where it'll be pretty tough to hurt you. And it's not like they have a ton of scoring options either. I think also, if he can get around 28 minutes tonight, I have no problem at all with him coming off the bench, Adam, because then you're seeing, in terms of against the Rockets, you look at the backup centers, you're going to get good minutes against a bunch of guys. Well, I'm not necessarily sure who it's going to be. If Marcus Chris is going to be getting backup 5 minutes, which is possible, or whoever it's going to be. But and you also mentioned PJ Tucker. But it's really not imposing at all for a guy like RHJ, who is very comfortable at playing a small ball 5. He's been doing it for a little while now, starting with the beginning of last year. You get him if you get him 28 minutes off the bench, let's say 27, 28 minutes off the bench, and he's out there with Dinwiddie and Davis and Crabbe and whoever else you want to throw out there. It really does actually increase his odds of having a good game, just as long as he doesn't, for some reason, play 23 minutes instead.
Right. Yeah, completely agree. I just think that the price tag's gotten so cheap that there's a lot more upside than risk for him, because it's like we've kind of seen him playing like to his floor and he's still been fine. And there's just a lot of room for improvement in terms of minutes and, production.
Yep. Curious about Jared Allen here. Center's not that deep. The problem is that if you're looking at Jared Allen on DraftKings, he's $100 more than a significantly underpriced Wendell Carter Jr. If you're looking at Jared Allen on FanDuel, he's $6,500. Wendell Carter Jr. $7,200, and he's only at power forward. So there is a bit of a discrepancy here. But Jared Allen on DraftKings is cheap. It's just he's $100 more than Wendell Carter.
Yeah, I mean, I still like him a lot. I have him projected for, right around the same as Wendell Carter. I think that they're both just really, really underpriced. Like, I think Jared Allen plays around 30 minutes as long as he doesn't get in foul trouble. And it's a spot where I think he should do pretty well against, a Rockets team that's just been trash in all aspects, really. Inefficient shooting, giving up, a ton of points. So I just think that he's too cheap as well. I expect that he'll also be lower owned than Carter, since Carter's coming off that monster game.
Got to be way lower. Got to be way lower owned than Carter.
Yeah, and so I like playing them together. On DraftKings, obviously you can do that, or just either one of them in tournaments are fine. If I have to pick one in cash, I'd go to Carter just because of the ownership. But I think that they're very similar in terms of projections, and one's going to be higher owned than the other.
I think, forgetting about center in general, these are two of your better value plays on the entire slate.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I was including Wendell Carter Jr., but I should also say that so is Hollis-Jefferson. In games that haven't blown out and he hasn't gotten in foul trouble, like competitive games where he's not in foul trouble, Jared Allen's played 29 minutes, 28 minutes, 27 minutes, and then 34 minutes and 30 minutes. Those are all competitive games where he hasn't been in foul trouble. He could easily exceed 30 minutes here, and it's Kenny Atkinson generally doesn't like to do that, but he has been willing to with Allen this year, and he's played really well, both on the glass and defensively. I've been really impressed. I know I've said it a lot over the past week or so, but I really have. Thoughts on the rest of this team? Karis LeVert, D'Angelo Russell, anyone I haven't mentioned?
Yeah, nothing but really secondary guys behind Allen and Hollis-Jefferson. I like Karis LeVert a lot. The issue is just that there are some guys priced a little bit cheaper than him that I like. So if he ends up in my lineups, then fine, but he's not someone that I expect to be prioritizing. The same really can be said for, D'Angelo Russell. I like him. It's just that there's a million other guys to play.
Right. Yeah. SJM said not too crazy to play the center position at 6'6". Zion probably going to play some center at that height. That's the whole point. It's not crazy to play center at 6'6" in 2018 anymore. Like if I would have told you this 5 years ago, it'd have been insane. But everything's changing, and it's positionless basketball, and it's a lot of fun. It's definitely harder to evaluate though and analyze. Chicago and Indiana. Let's talk about this one, Adam. There's a bad Bulls team, man. There's a real bad Bulls team. 211.5 total. Pacers by 7.5 on the road. Let's start with the Pacers. I want to ask you about Depot. You look at his price on DraftKings. You know, he's $700 more than Butler, who's in a game with a 243-point total. And then he's really not that much cheaper than other plays on DraftKings where you have so much flexibility. He's not that much cheaper than other guys that I like a lot that we'll get to shortly. And then you got Zach Lavine on the other side at 7,600, who's still underpriced. Victor Oladipo is in no man's land when it comes to pricing, and it makes it really tough for me to get any love for him here, even in a great matchup.
Yeah, I agree with you on the price, but I still just really like him because it's a spot where he has so much going in his favor. You know, for one, he's someone who does well in transition. This Bulls team has been terrible overall, but they've also been bad at defending in transition. He's going to be defending a very, very high usage player in Zach Lavine, who turns the ball over plenty. So there's a ton of upside for defensive stats. As long as the game stays close, you're going to get big minutes out of Oladipo with a monster usage rate. So, and I don't expect him to be highly owned, which is really nice because it means you don't have to have a ton of him in tournaments to still have, you know, plenty of leverage on the field. So I do like Oladipo. I love the matchup for him, but the price tag is a concern, like you said.
If this is the first night that I don't tout a low-owned Oladipo and he goes for 60, I'm going to lose my shit. I mean, every time we've liked him before, he hasn't hurt you. You know, you're not 45 fantasy points, 43 is not hurting you when he's at sub 8K. But when he gets up to this price, that's where it worries me a little bit. Look, no arguments. It's a really good spot. It's just from a construction standpoint, I'm having trouble working him in there. And there's so many reasons why that we'll get to throughout the show. But yeah, if you like him for low-owned reasons and just the fact that it is a really good spot, teams have obliterated this Chicago team. That's no question. Clay dropped the 50 in like three quarters. It was against Chicago, right? It was against Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's who he set the record against.
Yeah, against Chicago. It was the Kings before that. I remember that monster Clay game from a couple of years ago. Yep. So I am by no means discounting or downplaying the matchup. Dude, it's excellent. I just wish he was a little bit cheaper. That's all. But we can work through that throughout the show. We still got some games to get to. We had a couple questions I want you to touch on about Sabonis and Turner, and I think a lot of them were FanDuel specific. Where Turner's 6K, Sabonis is power forward, but he's 6K, and you know people were going back and forth. Go ahead and just break this Indy front court down.
So I think that they're both in a spot to be really, really productive here. You have to, in terms of projections, like if you're projecting median outcomes or most likely outcomes, you have to give the bulk of the minutes to Miles Turner just because that's how they utilize him. But Sabonis is just such a productive guy whenever he's on the floor that it only takes a few extra minutes for him to become a really, really good play. So the way I handle it in tournaments is I'll have more exposure to Miles Turner since he plays, you know, the bulk of the minutes most frequently, but I also I've intentionally overprojected Sabonis for the spots where he does end up running into 26, 27 minutes instead of 20, 21, and I'll just cap my exposure on him so that I'm overweight, and he's only a guy that's 3 to 5% owned, so it's not really tough to get overweight without putting a ton of money at risk. So that's how I handle it. Just kind of trying to get a shot at both guys because they both have such monster upside depending on how the game goes.
Yeah. I could see it. Having trouble getting there. What about anything else from Indy?
I really like the entire team. Like we just talked about Turner and Sabonis, but Darren Collison's 4,600 on DraftKings. I have him as one of my favorite value guys. Should play he didn't play the entire fourth quarter against the Knicks, which sucked. But normally he's going to get 28 to 30 minutes as long as the game stays competitive. It's obviously a really, really good spot. Bogdanovich is someone that thrives in transition as well. Ranks in the 86th percentile in points per possession in transition this season, and has a great matchup for that here. So just getting a ton of exposure to Indy is something that I really want to do tonight.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. God, the only concern for me is that this team can't play a competitive game. I know a few of them have been, but it's been ugly against good teams. But even in 3.5 quarters or 3 quarters, a lot of these guys have the upside to just put up monster stat lines.
Especially on DraftKings too. Like Oladipo is expensive, but everyone else is pretty cheap. Like it's
Right.
not tough at all for them to pay it off. And then also even guys like Sabonis would probably get a fourth quarter run regardless. Corey Joseph would get fourth quarter run regardless. So there's even some of the guys that you'd be mixing in the lineups are blowout proof basically.
Right. Miles Turner runs the risk of playing like 25 in a blowout or 26. Maybe a little less than that, but it's still a solid spot for him. I think ultimately down the road, Chicago is going to be a tough matchup for centers because Wendell Carter Jr. is someone that is supposed to be really sound defensively, but you can't really anchor a defense when everything else is dysfunctional. So it's really not a concern whatsoever. Although he's 5K on DraftKings, Adam. If you look at the minutes recently over his last 3, he's played 22, 27, and then 38. That last game did go to overtime. While Cristiano Felicio over his last 3 has played 26, 21, and 15. So while his minutes have gone down by 5 or 6 in each of his last 3, we've seen Carter's go up by 5 and then up by 11, again, overtime, but still definitely earning the trust of Fred Hoiberg. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but if for fantasy purposes, it's a good thing. He can give you the defensive stats. He's beginning to pick up a good amount of rebounds. You're really starting to see this kid develop. It's early to really say whether or not we can trust him in terms of, consistency, but it kind of doesn't matter at 5K flat.
Yeah, exactly. You talked about the minutes between him and Felicio, and it's basically Wendell Carter's minutes to lose. When he gets in foul trouble, Felicio is obviously the beneficiary. They basically play 48 center minutes, but it's not like you're intentionally playing Felicio over Carter unless something went wrong. So it's like you project him for 30 to 32 minutes and just move on. It's a perfectly fine spot against this Indiana front court. He's just way too cheap, has about a 21% usage rate this year. He rebounds, he assists. There's no reason not to like him, unless you're factoring in ownership or something. But it's just too good of a spot. His price tag on DraftKings is just insane at 5K.
And I respect Miles Turner as a defender. He's a good defender, but at the same time, again, Carter Jr. is so cheap, and he's also able to give you, if he only scored 10 real points, but gave you 10 rebounds or 8 or 9 rebounds and some blocks and a few assists, that's not going to burn you either. He's just really, really cheap. So it's hard to get away from that. What about in tournaments with Carter?
I'm still going to be overweight on him. Like right now, we only have him projected around 20% owned. I would guess he's a little bit higher than that, but I'll most likely end up, with him as one of my highest owned guys just because the price is so cheap.
Yeah. It's really hard to get away from. It doesn't happen all that often where there's someone that cheap that is tough to fade even at projected relatively high ownership in tournaments. But I think you made a good point on Jared Allen too. If you are looking for a pivot, he's staring you right in the face at $100 more on DraftKings at least. Carter Jr. at 72 on FanDuel is a non-factor. Let's talk a little bit about Zach Lavine. He's second in the league in usage. That can be a little bit misleading only because the Bulls are playing at a much slower pace than some of the other guys around them, right? But at the same time, he's getting up 19, 20 shots every single game. And even in blowouts, he's not killing you. And he's one of several guys on this slate. He's one of several guys on this slate where his price tag has yet to reflect the minutes and the usage and the production that we've gotten from him thus far.
Yeah, exactly. The price tag just really hasn't risen for a guy who, if the game stays competitive, is going to play about 35 minutes with a usage rate up around 34, 35%. just too cheap for the floor and the upside that he offers. I do expect him to see plenty of Victor Oladipo, which is not ideal. But again, the price tag just is low enough that I don't really care all that much about that. The only real argument against Lavine is just that I think it is a pretty deep shooting guard position, and there are some other, underpriced options as well. So that will keep me from, making him like one of my highest owned guys, but I still think he'll be one of my highest owned shooting guards.
Right. Yeah. He's 12th in fantasy points and 18th in salary on this slate, for whatever that's worth. Obviously not much, but we know that he is undervalued based on what he's giving you. Now, I like a lot of other two guards and guys that you can slot in at his position, but put it this way, Adam, no one's going to fault you for playing a $7,600 Zach Lavine.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you interested anywhere else in Chicago? I think that's pretty much where I'm tapped out.
I like Jabari too. I just think he's too cheap.
Oh, I totally forgot about him. Yeah. I like him. I just completely forgot that he was even there.
Yeah, I mean, he gets a hit in usage playing now that he's starting alongside Lavine. But even if I project him for about a 22% usage rate instead of 25 or 26 like he was getting off the bench, he still just grades out as a great point per dollar option because he's going to play, 34 to 36 minutes as long as he can stay out of foul trouble. That was his issue in the last game. He still got there minutes wise because of overtime, but he had a very short stint in the first quarter because of he like immediately picked up 2 fouls. He does enough in the way of rebounding and, in the assist department that I think he, even with the decrease in usage, is still a perfectly fine option because he's just underpriced. Yeah.
It's exactly what I said in today's article. And I begrudgingly wrote him up because he's too cheap. Someone mentioned we don't give FanDuel any love. I'm going to give FanDuel love when there's guys that are, like FanDuel specific or better plays there. But so far, Wendell Carter Jr. is just not even a much better play. He's only the play on DraftKings. I think Jabari, where you get to his price point, sub 6K on DraftKings, he definitely takes a hit in usage playing the bulk of his minutes with Lavine. And had he not gotten in early foul trouble last game, he definitely would have played a lot more of those minutes with him. But if we're projecting him for around 35 minutes, then you kind of just have to bite the bullet at him. It's one of those things where I don't like playing Jabari Parker, but if he's that cheap and he's getting that much run, regardless of who he's playing alongside, you have to bite the bullet sometimes and be like, at least he's on the radar.
Yeah, exactly. And he did burn 30% of the field last time, so hopefully we don't get him quite as highly on this slate.
No, that was a terrible game from him.
Yeah.
Downright dreadful game. This dude played 36 minutes and finished with 6 points. I mean, that's bad. I don't have to tell you. I guess we can move on here. Glad you mentioned Jabari. Let's talk Washington OKC. This game is kind of fun. You have Washington by 3.5 points at home, 234.5 total. We like that. OKC playing their second of a back-to-back, but that's never phased old Westbrook. Westbrook's still under 11K on DraftKings. 11.7 on FanDuel is perfectly reasonable. And this is one of those spots that, even with Dwight Howard returning, which isn't too much of a concern, I'd like to know his minutes, but even with him returning, before returning, the Wizards were allowing the second most fast break points. Mind you, I can't look at play type data, but second most points on the fast break, where Russell Westbrook, unsurprisingly, ranks third. And then the third most second chance points, which are usually reserved for big men. But of course, Westbrook ranks 7th in that category as well. As you and I talked about this morning, I think it's feasible that Dwight Howard's just being in there cuts down a bit on the second chance opportunities. But at the same time, Russell Westbrook, he's producing 34% usage rate. When he's on the court, he's got about a third of his team scoring, 55% of their assists, 28% of the rebounds, and 26% is total steals while he's on the court. He does everything. He does everything for his team. It's him and Paul George, while Steven Adams plays along and generally does well at that. But I like Westbrook. I think this is a matchup where both starting point guards in this game are really appealing to me, particularly because the one we'll talk about later is very, very cheap.
Yeah, really nice spot for Westbrook here. Terrible Washington team defensively. They play at a fast pace. This should be, a really fast game overall with both these teams playing up in pace. And there's just no real reason not to like Westbrook here. I think long term that Howard should improve this team defensively, should certainly improve their rebounding, which has been a huge issue. But we're talking about a guy right now that is in too much pain to even sit down. He's already said that when he's not on the floor tonight, he will be laying on the floor on the side because he can't sit. So I just don't think that, between the fact that he's still not 100% healthy and this is his first time playing with these guys, we always see defensive issues when a new player comes in and has to play with new teammates. So I'm just not concerned about Howard coming back, improving this team immediately. So still really like them. Westbrook's still pretty inexpensive on DraftKings. It's tougher to get there on FanDuel, I know, because he's priced up a little bit more and you don't have quite as much roster flexibility. But yeah, it's a really good spot for Westbrook, and I like him a lot.
All right. CLA 3935 says 40 minutes in and just starting the fourth game. Pace is ugly. Sorry, we're the Utah Jazz of live streams, I guess. Love Westbrook here. I don't see myself paying for Paul George. Do you? If so, we can talk about it.
No, I don't see the need to go to George. If you do play George, it shouldn't be with Westbrook, I don't think.
No, it shouldn't. Although both of them, around 30+% usage. It's like the two of them, and then Schroeder comes in. But right. Thoughts on Steven Adams here?
I like him, especially paired with Westbrook. You and I have both talked a lot about how such a high percentage of his baskets come off of Westbrook assists. But in general, I think this is a good spot for him too. Washington has been an atrocious team rebounding so far this season. You mentioned the second chance points that they've allowed. Howard being back should improve that, at least somewhat immediately and long term. But again, you're talking about an injured Dwight Howard playing his first game in, including preseason and stuff. So I just don't think he's going to be at close to 100% here. I'm not going to downgrade Steven Adams too much with him coming back. So yeah, I like the spot for Adams. Not sure how much I'll actually be able to get into lineups, but it is a good spot.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if I'm getting them in either. If you do, he's a guy to pair with Westbrook, though.
Yep.
I always like pair. If I'm playing Adams, a lot of times I also have Westbrook. That's it from OKC for me. I really like Westbrook here. I think Adams is fine, but I don't know if I'm going anywhere else. Maybe you have someone else I'm missing, but I don't think this is a great team outside of those guys.
No, that's where I'm at as well.
Talk to me about John Wall. Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, because people always ask about Jeremy Grant. I think it's a perfectly fine spot for him. I have him projected to score like 24 fantasy points. The issue is just that, right. Yeah. The issue is just that he kind of lacks that ceiling to go much higher than that. So he's a good point per dollar play. I just don't like guys like that all that much in tournaments. Talk to me about John Wall. He's 94 on FanDuel, but he's 8,100 on DraftKings, his lowest price point of the season. I watched all of what I went back and was watching all of Kemba's attempts last night. Kind of crazy that he busted because he would go on these streaks. And Westbrook was guarding him a lot. There were a couple of possessions where Paul George was on him, Schroeder when he was out, maybe a little Alex Sabonis, but a lot of Westbrook. Stands the reason that Beal sees a whole lot of George tonight, and John Wall could see a whole lot of number 0. Yeah, it should help him the fact that he has Beal, he has Porter. Like, there's guys that need to be defended. You can't as easily just go hide, Westbrook somewhere. So, yeah, and I think he's just mispriced on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's different because he is more expensive, and we've talked a lot about how Wall comes with a really high floor, but generally doesn't give you those monster games that you need to pay off like a 10K salary. But at 8K, the floor is basically like if he hits his floor, you're perfectly fine. If he gives you like 40, 45 points, and he's more than capable of going out and giving you, 55, 57, that makes you really happy at $8,000. So clearly one of my core plays here just because of the price tag on DraftKings. Agreed. Marco says, great call on Fox yesterday, Laffy. You redeemed yourself from that DeAndre Jordan call the other day. Thanks. I'm glad I had to make up for the call before. But no, yeah, DeAndre Fox did us well. Big triple-double. He's finally starting to round into 4, man. I love what this kid's doing. Also, where's all this Westbrook is out talk coming from? Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this shit? Because I don't get that nonsense out of the chat unless you have confirmation, por favor.
We don't need that shit. Come on, please. Come on. That doesn't do anyone any good. If Westbrook was out, obviously Schroeder would be the guy, but don't do that, please. John Wall, did you cover the rest? I was reading this whole chat as it was flying by with this Westbrook nonsense. Did you cover the whole Washington team?
No, just talked about Wall.
All right. Talk to me about Dwight Howard coming back, making his Wizards debut. You must be stoked as a Washington fan.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited just to see as much dysfunction as we can get. It's going to be great.
Yeah. He's going to solve it all, man. He's that final piece of the puzzle that you need.
Yeah, man, it's going to be great. But no, I mean, I haven't seen anything specific on his minutes. I have him projected to play in the mid-20s just because I can't imagine that he's conditioned enough right now to go play, 30 plus minutes yet. So I'm not really planning on going there. Like, there's such good center value on this slate that I don't see the need to do it. I think Bradley Beal's a little bit underpriced. I like Wall more than I like Beal at their respective price tags, but especially because shooting guard's so deep as well. But I think $7K for Beal's fine. 5,400 for Porter's okay, but Wall's the guy that really stands out from this team.
Yeah, for sure. Just ahead of everybody else. The Boom on Slack asks at Laffy at Dial Up DFS, assuming that's you. Beal is still very cheap. Are you going to let the possible PG-13 defense against your affect your projections? I have an opinion, but we'll let you answer that.
No, I mean, I didn't drop his projection any more than what I already had him at. I have him as a good play, but not really that close to the best at shooting guard.
Yeah, I'm all right. I mean, I'll pass. I don't hate the guy.
The team defense is good as a whole. So even if you don't account for Paul George, you're not getting. It's not like projections are giving you some great spot for Bradley Beal. But
right.
It's good defense anyway.
But if the question is Bradley Beal still too cheap? The answer is yes. He is still very, very nicely priced. So there's no question there. Move on, or should we stick with this one?
No, that's all I have from this one.
All right, let's keep it going. New York and Dallas. This game in Dallas, Mavs are 6-point favorites. Would you look at that? 217 total here. It's funny. First game I feel of the season where you've got some totals that are, harkening back to 2017. Start with the Dallas Mavericks. Doncic back to point guard only, of course. And then you have Dennis Smith Jr. only at point guard on DraftKings. Doncic, fortunately, if you'd like to play him on FanDuel, is 8,100, and he's shooting guard eligible, which is it's a very reasonable price point. And then DeAndre Jordan going up against Mitchell Robinson and Enes Kanter. Probably a decent spot for him, but his prices come up as well. So let's talk about this Dallas squad.
Yeah, I mean, I have basically all the Dallas starters projected as good plays at their prices. Though the concern would be that in their game against the Lakers, we saw for the first time really them run a much deeper rotation where the bench played a lot more minutes. But from what I can tell, it's just that the starters were getting destroyed basically from the opening tip. So the bench got, longer stints basically. You had JJ Barea close over Dennis Smith Jr. as well. I don't think that's a huge concern going forward, though. I still have these guys projected to play, the 34 to 36 minutes that we've been seeing from them, basically game in and game out. So I like them here. Dennis Smith Jr. I think is really cheap at 5,500. Luka, you mentioned his price on FanDuel is really nice. I don't mind it on DraftKings either. It's just a really, really deep point guard position. All these guys basically, though, end up being, guys that I think are sort of secondary plays for me, because there are guys that I like a little bit more at their respective positions. But I like them all. So I'll probably end up with a lot of these guys in 15-ish% of my lineups.
It's kind of how it feels. Yeah. Including DeAndre, including Doncic. I wish he wasn't just point guard eligible. I think Wes Matthews needs to get some attention too. Yep. He made a terrible mistake that cost them the game against the Lakers. If you missed that, it was ridiculous. And a veteran, you would have thought Doncic would have done that, not Wes Matthews. But this dude is, if you look at just the playing time and all the run that he's getting, Wes Matthews this season is playing almost 35 minutes per game. He has 15 plus field goal attempts in 6 of 8 starts. And not really anything's changed since Harrison Barnes returned to the lineup either. So it's been a respectable season for Wes Matthews. He's still cheap. And it hasn't really, I think he's had one game that would really kill you at his price point. Maybe two. He was up there at 5,500, but he's dropped down to 4,800 on DraftKings. Even on FanDuel at 57. I don't think Wes Matthews against a bad Knicks defense is a bad play either, Adam.
No, I don't think so either. My only concern with him is that it's kind of like similar to the Jeremy Grant thing. Does Wes Matthews at around 5K ever go get you like 40 fantasy points?
The only reason go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The only reason I say that he is different than Jeremy Grant in one purpose is that he has 10 plus 3-point attempts in 4 games already this season. Like if Wes Matthews does get hot from deep, then yeah, he can have one of those like 30-point real games. Sure, it's on occasion, it's a once in a blue moon type thing. But with Jeremy Grant, you're never getting 10 3-point attempts, let alone 10 field goal attempts.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think that Matthews does project as a very good point per dollar play. So I do plan on playing him. It's just that my only issue with him is that I don't think he hits like a really high raw point ceiling all that often.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think he can once in a while because he is a shooter, but it's not going to happen all the time at all. Tim Hardaway Jr. is shooting a lot too, man. This dude's got a top 5 or top 7 usage rate in the entire league. The minutes are huge, 20 plus shots per game, jacking up threes. The peripherals haven't been great, but they haven't been awful. But he is one of those guys that the moment he has a bad shooting night, you're pretty much toast. He's only had like one of them so far that has really burned anybody bad, though. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and the minutes have been really nice too. He's going to go out there and just chuck up a bunch of shots. He also has picked up his assist percentage and his potential assist numbers with this new lineup. He's, handling the ball more, which is good to see. It makes him a little bit less scoring dependent. So, I do like him a lot. The problem is that he's the same price as Draymond Green, like with forward eligibility. So it might be kind of tough to prioritize him, but if you can get to him, then by all means, it's a really good play. I love Noah Vonleh here. Obviously, his price tag is getting a little bit more expensive, but I've really liked what we've seen from him since this lineup change. He ranked second on the team over those 3 games with 8 potential assists per game, trailing only Frank Ntilikina. Obviously he rebounds really well, but the passing numbers are just phenomenal. They'd been good already this season, and then they've ticked up even more. So it gives you, I think, a higher floor than we're used to seeing with Noah Vonleh. And even though, my gut is that I'm chasing points because we've never seen Noah Vonleh be a consistent fantasy player, I just think this is a completely different role for him. The minutes are relatively secure, and he's just too cheap. So I'm going right back to Noah Vonleh here. Ntilikina, I like as a value play. I like Vonleh more. But Ntilikina has seen a nice bump in his usage rate, 18.9% over those 3 games, 8.7 potential assists per game, still only $4,100 playing 32 or 33 minutes. So, I like all those guys. I think Dotson's a little underpriced for his minutes. And then I was talking to you earlier. You can't really project Cantor confidently for a lot of minutes, but I have him projected for like 1.5 DraftKings points per minute. So he's someone that I am making sure to get into some tournament lineups, because if he ends up getting like 26 minutes, I think he ends up being a really good play.
All right, move it on. To the next one we go, Adam. Talking about Utah and Memphis. No Donovan Mitchell. So this team hasn't seen a lot of turnover since the start of last season, so I don't mind doing this. If you take Mitchell and Hood off the court, I didn't take Hood off, Burks off. I'm not too worried about that. If you take them off since the start of last year, we'll keep in mind that Grayson Allen was acquired through the draft. Ricky Rubio has a 28% usage rate, 46% assist rate, and 1.28 fantasy points per minute. The next most favorable guy here would be Dante Exum. 27% usage, 28% assist rate, right around the fantasy point per minute. I know I'm hearing a lot about Royce O'Neal, and I get it. He's close to minimum salary. He is minimum salary on FanDuel. But with Mitchell and Hood off the court last year, Hood is a guy Royce is a guy who saw his usage rate at like 15%, his fantasy point production at like 0.8, which if you get 30 minutes, that's not that bad. But is he going to get those 30 minutes with Grayson Allen here, with Dante Exum set to see decent run? I don't know, man. I'd rather go Exum and Rubio.
Yeah, I'm there with you as well. If you run those numbers without Mitchell and Hood on and you put Rubio with Gobert to try and account for him being with the starters, you still get close to a 25% usage rate. And he's just really, really cheap. It's obviously a tough matchup, but I can't get over the price tag and the opportunity he's going to have here without Mitchell. And then Exum, this season, even just overall the season has a 23.5% usage rate, 21.3.
Second highest on the Jazz, by the way.
Yeah, 21.3% expected assist percentage. He's been, very involved. So it's not like we're talking about a bench guy that we're, hoping does something different. It's like, just keep doing what he's doing. The minutes are going to be there. He should get time alongside Rubio in addition to being the backup point guard. You mentioned O'Neal. I think that there's certainly, merit at his basically minimum price tag, but I'm not as sold on the minutes, and I don't think you are either, as other places I've seen, because he essentially this season has just been playing the three, backing up Joe Ingles, and Grayson Allen's been playing the two. So I'm not confident in Allen's minutes or O'Neal's minutes, but I think that there's I think there's risk in both guys, and I'm basically just splitting my exposure to them and trying to get some of each, because I wouldn't be surprised if we see Grayson Allen pick up a bunch of minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if O'Neal does, but I just don't really have confidence in either one.
You could definitely see O'Neal playing like 25 and Allen playing 18 or something.
Right.
And you need a little more than that from O'Neal. By the way, if you take Burks off the court since the start of last year, 128 minutes for Rubio, not a ton, but 32% usage rate. Dante Exum in 191 minutes, 30% usage rate. And we know that Alec Burks is out. Rubio assist rate, 63%, Exum 29%. Exum's per minute production goes over 1, and Rubio's at 1.55. So, look, the matchup sucks. I totally get it. But we go by numbers a lot of times, Adam. All of the numbers, if you were to ask, all right, based on the numbers dating back to last season, who benefits most from this, from a usage standpoint, from a production, from an efficiency standpoint, clearly Rubio number 1, and then clearly Exum number 2.
Yeah, completely agree. And they're both cheap enough that the matchup isn't that important.
Agreed. All right, fly through the rest of this game for me. That was the breakdown I thought was the most important here.
That's pretty much all I have. I have some interest in Mike Conley from the Memphis side. Everything else is just secondary.
I wouldn't be surprised if either one of Gobert or Gasol drops a monster game, just because it always seems to happen. But I'm not really sure I'd like to go there. Two really, really great defensive centers. So I think I shall pass. Toronto and Phoenix. Kawhi Leonard coming in a nice 5-figure, $10,100 price tag on DraftKings. He's 10-3 on FanDuel. Adam, I'll just be straight with you. I don't know if you're ever going to catch me paying more for Leonard than Kevin Durant. Certainly not when both games have a lot of blowout potential. They're both double-digit favorites. Toronto is only a half point. Toronto's 10.5-point favorites. Golden State's 11-point favorites. And the one game's got a 243. Look, I'll make it real simple. I'm not paying more for Leonard than Durant. That's all.
Yeah, we were talking about it before the show. I think he's a better FanDuel play than DraftKings play, just because he is a little bit cheaper than Durant, and there's the positions. The roster is more rigid, but on DraftKings, I just can't get there, because even if he does go and give you, like a 50, 55-point game, which is certainly very possible, it doesn't kill you if you don't have him at that price. So it's just, I think he's priced out of consideration for me, at least on DraftKings. The rest of this game, I actually like the centers for Toronto. Serge Ibaka and Valanciunas are both reasonably priced for their upside. It's another spot where, kind of like with Turner and Valanciunas, Turner and Sabonis, you project Ibaka to get the minutes most of the time, but I also am kind of intentionally over projecting Valanciunas to make sure that I get him in some tournament lineups. I think that's price-wise my favorite spot from Toronto.
Fair enough. Yeah, basketball is one of those games where Leonard could go out there and drop his biggest game of the season, and it could look real bad because you played Durant. But on average, it's very rare that you play Durant at less of a price and someone else plays Leonard, and that on average you're getting burned because you played Durant over Leonard.
Right.
And this is a good spot for Durant, too. We're going to get there in the last game. And we'll definitely have a lot to talk about with that one before we turn it over to Eddie and Chris for the Live Before Lock show. But I'll ask you this. Pascal Siakam, he's looked really good. Siakam, man, that's an annoying one. He's looked really good over his last 3 games with OG Anunoby out, but he's back. I think you could warrant tournament consideration just because of how good he's been, but that's about as far as I'm willing to go when it comes to Siakam. Only because I don't know what Nick Nurse is going to do with Anunoby back. I wouldn't be surprised if Siakam plays 26 or 27, which is more than he was playing, but still doesn't play what he was playing when OG was out.
Yeah, exactly. I went ahead and projected Siakam for like 28 minutes just to see, where he ended up for me. And he still just ends up as a very fringe value play, which makes me feel pretty comfortable since there's a reasonable chance he plays even less minutes than that.
All right. Are you interested in anything on Phoenix? Booker's probable. It's obviously a really tough matchup. He's going to see a lot of Leonard. And then, of course, DeAndre Ayton is still pretty affordable, but not a great matchup for these guys.
Yeah, I mean, Booker and Ayton in tournaments, especially Ayton, I think at 7K just is, a really nice price tag.
Well, he's also getting blowout run. They're getting crushed,
yeah.
And he's still coming back. Kokoskou's playing him like 7 minutes in the fourth quarter, so he's kind of not vulnerable to that at all. That's why I would prefer him even in tournaments over Booker, oddly enough.
Yeah, and also, Booker's going to be dealing with Kawhi, whereas Ayton's not.
Yeah, it's a good point. All right, let's close it out, Adam. Golden State, Minnesota. We got this is the thing. This is good pace because we know which games we're going to spend the time on, and this is the one we'll spend a little time on to close it out. By the way, just a little bit of news here. Marcin Gortat might not play, and now Coach Rivers is looking to possibly change the starting lineup. There's a very good chance that starting lineup change comes with Boban Marjanovic as a starter, and if it does at his price point, you're just going to have to consider him. If you have anything to say on it, go ahead, because I think that might be the lineup change we're looking at.
Lou Will.
I don't think Lou Will. I don't see any way I don't see why they would start Lou Will, but maybe you're right. Go ahead.
If that's the lineup change, then obviously they're not concerned about the back-to-back, and everything we said about his minutes goes out the window.
Yep, climbing Mount Everest. All right, Golden State, Minnesota, highest total on the slate, 243. Warriors are 11-point favorites, but something I say quite often, they let inferior teams hang around, and then they just kind of beat the shit out of them halfway through the second half. This game is it's too tasty for me to say, too much blowout concern. I don't want any.
Yeah, and nobody's really that expensive. You have Steph right around 10K, Durant right around 10K. They can easily beat those prices in 3 quarters if they have to. But I'm just not too concerned about that. I like both of those guys a lot. I think it's a good spot for Clay. I'm making sure to get him in some tournament lineups. Draymond's just absolutely mispriced still. And you also get Durant, Clay, and Draymond as long as the game's reasonably close starting the fourth quarter. So they don't even suffer that much in blowouts as long as it's 15 or something points after 3. So I love the Golden State side here. I am going to have one of those guys in a lot of tournament lineups.
The baller 2234. Shut up, Laffy. Huh. I wonder what I said. All right. Well, I will shut up in about 5 minutes, so you don't have to worry about that. Draymond Green, whether you like the guy or not, is still just way too cheap. He still has that he has that low end triple double upside. Like Dre can give you the 12, 10, and 11 with 3 blocks and 3 steals. How many times has he done it? You're under 7K on DraftKings, even on FanDuel at 8K at a bad position. I don't think Dre is out of consideration at all. Like I know he hurt you the other day, but Dre's in a good spot, man.
Yeah, I like Dre a lot.
I really like Durant too. Anytime he's under 10K, but on FanDuel, I very much in play too. I just think on DraftKings, where we got into the Kawhi discussion, I really like Durant here. You could see an easy 60+ game from him at a sub 10K price point. That's really hard to get away from. You mentioned Curry, Durant, and Green, my 2 favorites here. On the other side of the game, let's talk about buckets. I still think we can say that when he plays, he's going to play his ass off, and he's going to play, 36, 37 minutes. So I'm not really concerned about that. And he's $8,000 on DraftKings, which just seems outrageous given the price of some of the other guys around him.
Yeah, and he also, going back to last season, if you look at the numbers, he sees an increase in his usage and his assist percentage without Jeff Teague on the floor. Obviously, Derrick Rose isn't in a lot of those minutes, but I don't expect Butler to defer to Rose. So I do think that it's still a boost for him not having, a true point guard out there in Teague. And then on top of that, high scoring game, really cheap price tag. I like Jimmy Butler quite a bit.
Alex Osimo says Boban played 17 minutes in the second half when Gortat was out 34 minutes tonight, confirmed. I know that's a troll comment. Now, what do you think Boban's max minutes are? I would say 25.
That sounds about right. I think, what did he play, like 30 in that start last year?
Yeah, or 2 years ago? But I don't know if if Boban plays 34 minutes, that'd be amazing. And if you don't have him, you basically lose everything. If he plays 34 minutes. All right, I got to ask you about Derrick Rose.
Yeah, I think he's a fine play. I'm not like jamming him in or anything. I think that he obviously takes a hit with Jimmy Butler being back, but he also takes a hit with Tyus Jones being back because he's not going to get 41 point guard minutes today. He's going to play sometime off ball, at the 2. He's going to still get a bunch of point guard minutes with Teague out, but those minutes will be alongside Butler in addition to Wiggins and Cat. I still think he's cheap enough in a, really good environment that he's a good play. It's just that it's nowhere near the play that he was last time.
All right, a lot of Boban talk coming on the Twitter machine. It's coming. There's no doubt. Boban's getting the start. He should have a cameo in Game of Thrones as the Hound in the Mountains, like long lost brother. Do you watch Game of Thrones?
Nah.
Damn it.
No idea what you're doing.
Right?
I'm in for that.
Right? Because they've already gone off script so bad. Who would give a shit anymore if Boban just showed up as like, give him a cool nickname? And
I was trying to think of one. I couldn't think of it.
Me neither. I'll think of one for next show because everyone will be on pins and needles waiting for that. All right, the last one here, and then we'll hit our positions and hand it over to Chris and Eddie. Karl-Anthony Towns, man. He looks like he's back, man. He's looking. You never know, but I like what I'm seeing from Towns, just more aggressive over the last 2 games. He has had success against this Golden State team, and a lot of that is because of the way that this dude plays. When he is aggressive, he's very athletic for a 5. He can play, smaller. He can play fast pace. He's sub 9K on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he's 9,500. He's still underpriced.
Yeah, the only issue that I have with Towns is, in addition to Butler coming back, that cuts into his usage some, but we've just talked about how cheap the centers are, at least on DraftKings. I think it makes Towns easier to play on FanDuel. There's no questioning his upside here. It's just like the opportunity cost of the position is going to probably keep my ownership a little bit lower than it otherwise would be.
Yeah, I'm just going to roll the dice. This is a game where I think game stacking is beautiful. You can just game stack the shit out of this game, left and right, everywhere you want to go. And it definitely is. Everyone's throwing out nicknames. Yeah, we need a good nickname for Game of Thrones cameo Boban. All right, point guard, top 3, go.
Steph, Paul, Westbrook.
Wall definitely for me, definitely Westbrook, and I'll throw Paul in there as well. But
also Rubio.
Yeah. Oh, and Rubio. Yeah, absolutely Rubio. Shooting guard. Give me Butler. Dante Exum here is very nice. I think Hardaway in tournaments is also pretty solid. And then I think you just got to get a little funky. Maybe you just roll the dice on someone having a big game like Gordon or Fournier. But Wes Matthews would be my other value guy along with Dante Exum. Go ahead.
Butler, Exum, Klay Thompson for me.
All right, small forward.
Kevin Durant, Jabari Parker, Tim Hardaway.
Yeah, the same 3 for me. Power forward, it's not good here. So I'm probably going to just try and look for multi-position eligibility guys like Durant on DraftKings. Throw a Vonleh in there. And if you want, you go ahead and you look at some of these cheap guys like Hollis-Jefferson and such.
Yeah, Vonleh, Green. You mentioned Hollis-Jefferson, so I'll mention Jonathan Isaac.
All right, center.
Carter, Allen, Capella, Ayton.
All right, Carter, Towns, Jared Allen, and then throw Ayton in there. I think Vooch is still in play as well. All right, thanks as always for watching. Adam and I will see you back here on Monday on the deeper dive. Hit us with a like. Come on, boys. Get us up over 117, 867 watch. Come on, do us that solid. That's the least I can do. Good luck. Good luck. We'll see you back here on Monday. And then stick around for Eddie and Chris, live before lock.